Hey, welcome to Japec Community Life Law, Order, and Justice section. We're here today with, I guess to my left now, Ralph. Tell me a little bit. You're running for city council, and then of course George, who's running for mayor, and then we have a regular citizen right here who is George's manager. We're going to discuss the things that happened on Friday night and what could have been resolved and how it probably would have been the best way for Groveland. On our panel today, we're going to start from left to right, and then we're going to go forward. So I know y'all don't get the joke, but we got to get our coordination together here. So what we're going to start off with is, if you, George, we'll start with you if it's okay with you. Let's start in the beginning. They had an opening statement with the lawyer. If you remember the statement, he talked about what was going on. And, you know, maybe before that, how could this have been handled if you was mayor on this, the whole meeting, and then we'll break the meeting down?
Well, first of all, I think the attorney clearly expressed the due process of Mr. Redmond's contract. I think that would have been an opportunity for the mayor to kind of sort of put everything on hold, because the contract states that he has 30 days to prove his case. There was nothing ever done as far as investigating or filing documentation with regards to the allegations of anything that he might have violated on his contract. So third is the mayor. I think his biggest responsibility should have been that night was to call for a motion to suspend the meeting right away until further investigation is done, and then come back and meet with the council in closed door, elaborate the issue. I think that the way this whole played out did not help the people of the city of Groveland, number one. Number two, I think it also put the city at risk for a lawsuit. Everyone has due process. And when you're talking about a contract, you're talking about a contract that I don't even know whether the city attorney signed the contract. Who drafted the contract, Mr. Jones? All I know is that I can tell you, I've read the contract. I'm still reviewing some of the things in the contract. In Article 5, Section 4.3 and 1, the clear states that Mr. Jones' responsibility in terms of in-house issues comes to him, but that process did not play out with him.
Okay. And you next, how would you have handled, since you are going to be, hopefully, council member, what do you see that this could have been resolved?
Councilman for District 5, for District 3, absolutely. Thank you.
Informing us and letting us know where he's going to finally be at. Go right ahead.
And speaking it forward. First of all, thank you for bringing this panel together and giving us an opportunity to respond to the activities of Friday night. The entire night was unfortunate to begin with. Okay? The activities that developed that night, first and foremost, I would have liked to see the mayor, before taking it to that action, think about the citizens and the businesses of Groveland. Is this in the best interest of the city? Quite frankly, we're talking about an outgoing mayor who's not going to be left responsible for dealing with the repercussions of that meeting. That's going to be left, hopefully, on the backs of Mr. Rosario, myself, and some of the other ongoing councilmen that are going to be coming in. So it would have been a better situation to allow us to be able to have all the information, give us the facts, and let us sort of get a head start on dealing with it. What's the best way to handle this, so we're not bringing yet again more negative an image on our city. That's what we did not need. We've been in a position lately, Anthony, where we started to attract what we wanted to attract.
You're not a friend, it's justice.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
I want to make sure you get that right.
Thank you very
Only
much.
close friends call me Anthony. You know what I mean?
Thank you. But we want to be in a position where we're attracting. We're giving a positive image and attracting business. What happened Friday night clearly showed that there was underlying agenda and another reason for that entire evening to go on. First of all, the entire thing came off in less than 48 hours. Why the hurry? Why the rush? Secondly, if it was that much of an impact where you had to bring it up, there could have been a better way of doing that. The mayor has at his disposal the ability to call private shea meetings or quiet meetings for the council to still be able to get together legally and discuss the issues that need to be discussed amongst them, and not to be able to bring yet another negative impact on the city on his outgoing.
Okay.
Which tells me that there's other reasons that this whole thing came about that may have nothing to do with Mr. Jones or his contract. Have there been events and things that have gone on that need to be reviewed and need to be looked into by the incoming council? Absolutely, I agree with that.
Okay.
But I don't agree that it should have been handled the way it was. It was handled ineptly, and it was handled with purpose that did not have the best interest of Groveland in mind.
Are you done?
Yes, sir.
All right now. Let's move to you, Mr. Myers.
Yes, sir. Mr. Justice.
There you go. He's not a friend either. All right, now tell me what you feel about how this would have handled and played out as a citizen of Groveland.
Well, I was listening to Mr. Morris as well as my candidate, Mr. Rosario. I agree with both of them. As a citizen, I sat there 5 hours. I listened very attentive to everything. And I don't think any of this was really necessary that evening until he was presented his actual charges in written form. There was no reason to head this way whatsoever. So that's my personal take on the whole thing. So no matter what we say here, I don't think it should have ever happened until it was thoroughly investigated. The agenda is a problem that I have with. I was going there under the impression that he was going to be terminated by the agenda, and you guys can chime in on that later on if you want. And all of a sudden, towards the end, that agenda changed into leave. And I was listening to what my candidate's saying about reviewing the contract. I also was sort of reviewing the contract, not as in-depth as Mr. Rosario is talking about, but what I did find, and I don't want to say I'm 100% sure, but there was no indication in the contract for the way they ended the meeting, leave with pay.
Okay.
To my knowledge, there was no meat and potatoes, as you might put it, to leave with pay.
Okay.
But there were conditions of 30 days in writing, of course, presenting him with his cause for termination.
Okay.
But it never became that. So there might be a loophole in the contract. That's what I'm trying to say. That they were able to move the way they moved.
Okay, so let's roll right into the meeting now.
Okay.
Should there have been, and this has been the biggest issue, and I requested this a while back, should it have been some sort of a complaint form by now done in Groveland that we can find out who complained, they file it so it's public records, we know what the complaint is. So I want to start off with you again. Is this something that should be implemented so everybody will have some sort of form, know what it is? If you're going to be accused of something, you need to have it in writing. This is just me talking. Okay, in my opinion, as justice, you still need to have a form. That's what they do in a big city. You got a complaint form.
That's right.
You don't like something, you fill it out, you hand it in, the public can see it, everybody can see it, and even the person who's being accused should have something in their hand prior to going to a meeting if it's going to concern them. Now, of course, you know we do all three sides. So I'm going to start with you. How would you change this system so that we can better have it on an agenda or know what's going on, sir?
Well, let me tell you, first of all, we are operating with a city charter that clearly reflects 1922. A charter that is so outdated that allows these kinds of things to occur. Having to advocate for a charter review committee board has been something that others individual has spoke against it, and they have their reasons for it. As far as a document that you can track as to who filed the complaint, so you can have accuracy as to public record, as who is making accusations about what of an employee or a staff or a police officer or a firefighter, those documents are thrown away. And that's the practice that is still going on in the city of Groveland.
But was there any documents?
Well, it could be anything. It could be a public record request form. Public record request form, they're not required to file it. and keep it on file for 7 years. Okay? So they dispose of those files, so you never know who put in the request for that document. It doesn't have a paper trail of an individual that submitted the request for whatever the nature might have been.
Well, even if it is, my point that I want to know is, if you're going to say you accuse me of something, shouldn't I be able to find out what it is before I get to the meeting so I can defend myself?
Absolutely.
Or have it in front of me to look at. So I want to know, if you being mayor, how are you going to change this, or what are you going to do to implement it so hearsay is kind of starting to diminish?
Well, I mean, the one thing that I will do is, we'll begin to look at the city charter. Number one, transparency is very important. The charter needs to reflect new revisions where these situations are occurring now, and implement new resolutions that council, the mayor, can spearhead it and get them approved, so there'll be more transparency. As far as the public record request form, they exist. But until we implement the changes of resolutions in that charter and get them passed by the mayor and the council, and you have an actual ordinance on the books, then you begin to now say, now anybody can come in and ask for the request of whoever is filing a complaint, filing a public record request that is on file, and by state statute should be kept for at least 7 years on file. And that doesn't exist. So I will implement that. And furthermore, what I will implement the most is, we have a police advisory committee that should be investigating the police officers, but yet their hands are tied. Not to get away from the subject about the public record request,
We're
but
gonna get to that.
this all comes into play. So it's very complicated when you try to put in a request of an officer document, because they're protected under a state law of
Right.
privacy. So, those kinds of things, that committee should be allowed to do their job. And this is why you have what you have now in Grove.
Okay. Mr. Councilman?
Well,
Elect?
Thank
Elect?
you. Elect, for right now.
Yeah.
The short answer is no. In my opinion, I don't think there is one. There is no process or procedure in place. And just the reason why I say that is, this all developed in less than 48 hours. How could there have been fair disclosure and opportunity for the accused in less than 48
Well,
hours?
I beg to differ on this. We done had this same scenario 4 times. This is the 4th time. So I want to know by now, why isn't it that you don't have paperwork where people can file a complaint and the person who's been accused can get to look at it if they got to defend themselves? That's what I'm asking.
I'm asking the same thing you asked.
Well, I can't answer you because I'm asking you.
Well, hopefully, you'll answer, I'll be able to answer you after that.
You have a comment?
I have a
Or you
comment
finished
on
with your
that.
thought?
Well, my idea is that, again, the way this is laid out was inept. There should be a clear path, not just for the council, but for the staff and for the residents of Groveland, that when they have a grievance, there is a clear path on how it's to be accomplished, how it's to be brought to light, and how it's to be rectified. There should be a clear path, and there isn't one, and that's part of the process. You mentioned that this is the 4th time we've been through this.
And then, of course, since I've been covering, it seems like it's more hearsay. So if we can't face who accused us, and even if you face who you accuse, which is good, where's the paperwork so I can properly prepare myself and know what I'm being accused of? It doesn't help if you walk into courtroom and they say, well, what are the charges? And the prosecutor goes, I don't know, we just thought, whatever, you know what I mean? That doesn't help.
But
We just thought about it.
I agree, but doesn't that usually happen whenever someone's trying to either trick you or surprise you?
Mhm.
Because they purposely want to catch you unprepared and unaware.
So what I'm asking, you've been down in Groveland how many years?
I've been on Groveland going on 13 years.
13 years, how about you, George?
Since 2006.
Since 2006, and yet nobody has fought for any kind of paperwork, or this has never happened?
Oh, we've had. I've received, in fact, I've requested documents that the city clerk has responded back through emails, and I have those documents, that those documents are not available because they don't hold on.
Well, I'm not talking about availability, I'm talking stage 1. When I went to Anton Bruce, we actually broke down how a bill goes. As community, how would we go about getting something implemented through the city that says we need to have a sheet of paper that says ABC? Whereas if I'm going to accuse you of something, you should have that right to see what you're being accused of in writing to properly prepare, and not someone go, well, you know what, he didn't do this, or they didn't. We gotta have that silent to prevent lawsuits. Right now, just like the lawyer said, I don't see anything. I didn't see anything.
Right.
So how, and if you need the public to help you, how do we get this implemented? How do we do this?
One way, adopt a resolution, bring it to council, put it into the books. This is the law. Any documents regarding this form requested by private citizens as well as by staff, it's in the books that exist. And as long as we don't have it in the city charter as a resolution and passed by council and the mayor, they will not play with it. They will not even touch it.
I'd like to say something.
Oh, well, go right ahead. You want to skip
You guys
this?
are having too much fun here. But getting back, Mr. Justice.
Yeah, that's it, because we're not friends. Go ahead.
We're not friends. You had said this is what, the fourth time?
The fourth time, correct?
Okay,
Am I right?
I want to touch upon that. My observations as a citizen going to the meetings and watching, observing council, the last time this happened, as I recall, and I mentioned it in another interview that I had done with you in regards to what I observed. The bottom line was council was to give Mr. Jones his parameters to his job scope and what was expected of him. Do you gentlemen agree with me?
I agree. That was correct.
That never happened. Do you agree with me on that?
Absolutely.
As far as we know.
Right.
And this is our opinion, of course. So our opinion is we didn't see this happen. So I like to make a for instance. If he's to check on credit cards on a weekly basis of expenditures, that should be in his job
Yeah, I
scope.
want to let you know you're stepping on my toes because we're going to get there. All right? So
I
you're
didn't
stepping on my toes.
Well,
I want to let you know what you're doing.
You know what?
Did I say we're going to break it down?
we're gonna
He
break
wants
it
to
down.
just go straight to the credit cards and everything else.
Well,
Go ahead.
Holding back.
No, I'm holding back. That's okay. But I was dying to get in on that fourth thing because Mr. Jones isn't guilty in this respect. It's the mayor and council that agreed to do this. That never happened. I was there.
Right.
And you know what? What's unfortunate is, the bottom line is, who's at these meetings? Me, Mr. Rosario, Mr. what's your name again? Mr. Morris.
That's a shame.
And-
That is really a shame. 13 years and you don't remember.
Or, I mean, there's Mr. Wilson, Mrs. Wilson, and we all sit there and we look at each other. It's pretty embarrassing most of the time. So as far as I'm concerned, we're the ones that really know what's going on. And we got to encourage more people coming to the meetings.
Okay.
Anyway, I had my time.
Thank you. All right. He had his say, and then went across the entire meeting and laid everything out already.
Laid it all out.
So
I didn't realize that.
I guess the next subject, since he wants to hit on this, is we done 4 meetings with Mr. Redmond, and now we got the chief involved.
Right.
The credit card situation, since he done decided he wanted to go forward on this.
Right.
How would you resolve that to make sure that it doesn't happen again? Do we take all the credit cards back? Is there a format that they got to sign for them, or how is that going to be your resolution? We'll go to you first.
Okay.
Because me and George always argue.
All right. Well, to that end, again, and I think Mr. Rosario has said it already twice now, you have to have a clear policy in place as to how something occurs. For example, they mentioned that in that situation, the chief had went to the finance director and gotten approval from her for this activity, not from Mr. Jones. A clear policy would lay out, in order to use any sort of credit card or any charge by the city, only certain individuals could do it. Here's the path on how they can do it, and the parameters on what they can charge and what they cannot charge. If that had been in place, there would be no miscommunication, which, in my opinion, that's what developed out of most of this, was a miscommunication or lack thereof. But it's back to a lack of policy that the council seems unable or unwilling to address. And it starts with the leader of the council, which is the mayor. He was made aware of this, and my question to you would be, has there been an instance of this in the past, and has that gone unchecked and unanswered as well?
Well, I would like to request and let you know, you asking me a question about it. You said my question to you.
My question to you.
Well, how would I know if I just started the whole thing in January?
I understand,
We just getting involved
You're
in
the best
this.
one to find out out of all of us.
Well, I'm going to look into it. This is politics in Florida, Lake County with Groveland.
Yeah.
How would you answer that, Mr. George?
Well, first of all, I don't think that 17 credit card being out floating in staff's pocket or their wallet is the smart thing to do.
So how would you correct the situation?
Well, you know, you enforce policies.
Okay.
You meet with your city manager. You tell your city manager what you expect of him, of the taxpayers' expenses.
Okay, and you know what I heard him say policy, okay, and I hate to go this direction, but I have to. Policy is a nice word to say. Great. So how do you break the policy down? What words are you going to use to get this thing done? Because see, with my viewers, it's about the knowledge of getting people done. So we use the word policy. My policy is, for my daughter, she's not going to drive until she's 16.
Right.
Now tell me how I'm going to implement this and what needs to be written down so we can go A, B, C, D.
Well, I can tell you very, very simple. My policy would be no credit cards issued to any staff employed by the city of Groveland to take them home or to keep there in their pockets. They will sign them in, sign them out.
Okay.
One credit card should be good enough for each department head. Let the department head handle it, and the HR department should be the responsible individual for the finances of those credit cards used.
Okay.
And report back to the city manager as to all those expenses were they justified.
Now, in the defense that we heard the other night. In fact, do you need to talk about the credit cards?
I'm just sitting.
You're done? Okay. All right. In the defense of
I'm just a
that.
citizen.
In the defense of the credit cards, let me ask you this, since we where the credit cards are. In the defense of the credit cards, suppose the city manager was unaware of it until 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, and yet this went on for a period of time. And suppose he wasn't the one who authorized it. Now, you already had a miscommunications with PD. All right, so now how is that going to be handled? Should he get written up? Should it be 3 times and then you have a chat with him? Or how does all that work on your shift?
I think you got, you know, common sense. You have to use common sense.
Okay, who's to say that people have this?
Not many.
Okay.
Not many people can say that. How many people can say that these elected sitting officials have
Well, we're not going to
common
say that.
sense?
It's our opinion.
The most
But go ahead.
smartest ones don't have. That's not a funny issue.
Yeah.
People that have fantastic educational experience, common sense they lack. It's amazing
Okay.
how.
Now, you're going to get in trouble. I appreciate you saying this, but the camera lady goes from left to right. Now, I don't want to know stuff, but she's going to get a little teed off with you. Thank you, dear. All right, let's start with him again.
But I want to join in on this one. How do we correct it? Okay.
You know, again, you know, if the situation arises and the city manager is unaware, okay, it's still his responsibility to make sure what's going on with his head department. That's, you know, part of his contract.
That's right.
Overseeing I'm not putting blame on anyone here. All I'm saying is, you know, your city manager needs to use common sense. Not only this is his contract, you are to oversee your head departments, know what they're doing, be on their P's and Q's and say, hey, everything that you do, anything that you try to do, or anything that you want to implement, I should be part of it. And not asking that I should be part of it, I should know.
So
that
after 3 weeks from now, let's say it happened 3 weeks from Thursday, 3 weeks ago. After he found out, what should he have done to implement it?
He should have brought the HR department director in, narrowed down the situation, brought it up to the mayor, that is being taken care of.
Okay.
Now you've given the mayor the opportunity. This went down on my watch. I'm letting you know we're doing something about it. Okay. So now, if anything comes out, it's already been discussed. A plan of action's been taken. Okay. Whether Mr. Jones needs to say to the HR department, I would have to write you up for this. That's policy. We're talking about policy again.
Right.
So, you know, it's what the city manager needs to enforce and let head department know,
Mhm.
I call the shots, not you.
Mhm. Okay, and how do you feel, Mr. Ralph?
Well, I agree with a lot of what Mr. Rosario is saying. It comes down to, as you asked, it comes down to policy. Policy is synonymous with procedure. That's what it comes down to.
Sharp
Procedure
words. Go ahead.
and guidelines. It takes out the need to have people with common sense. Because common sense takes a back seat when they have a procedure in place that they know they must follow. You want to use a credit card? I go to my procedural book.
Correct.
I see who's authorized to use it, and for that person, the procedure that they have to follow to use it. If that's done, it takes the guesswork out and it gives synergy among everyone, because I don't have to guess if you know what happened, because all you had to do was read the policy. We all know the same thing.
Okay.
That's the first thing. Now, this is not to excuse the city manager. Like Mr. Rosario said, the city manager controls the city. Everything happens under his watch. He inevitably is responsible for everything. We know that. But at the same time, it's not reasonable to believe that he can have his hand involved in every activity that goes on.
That's why I mentioned if he found out 3 weeks ago. I don't know how long he's known, but let's say 3 weeks. After he found out what should have been the procedure. Of course, he answered it, so that's the question I'm relaying to you.
Right.
What is the procedure he should have done to make sure this thing doesn't blow up the way it is now?
Well, the procedure that they have in place, I don't know, because there doesn't appear to have been one.
Well, we only talk about opinion, so I'm
But
asking
in my opinion,
Mhm.
had I been a councilman and Mr. Rosario been mayor, on our watch, I know, speaking for me, we would have had procedure there, and the first thing I would have done is I would expect the city manager to go right to the department head. Because every department head is responsible every 30 days for any charges, fees, or encumbrances that are going to be levied against the city, i.e. credit card charges, bills, or anything else.
Right.
They are responsible every 30 days to know what's going on and to make a regular report, whether it be 30 days, every quarter, or what have you, to the finance director, who then reports to me, the city manager.
And
That
then-
is the procedure.
And then the city manager should report it to the mayor.
And the city
and
manager
council.
brings it to the attention of the mayor. The mayor is in charge of the council. It is his responsibility to decide what actions and activities need to be brought up to the procedure body, the policy body, which is the council. That is the mayor's job, not the city manager's job.
Okay,
That's where the breakdown happens.
okay. So,
So ultimately, the responsibility really lies on the leader of council, the mayor. When I said that the city manager communicating it with the mayor should be taking this also back into consideration in advising the city manager, prepare it for a council consideration approval of a resolution to pass it as on the agenda. And if that doesn't take place, then there's no communications going
so
on.
let's say this. Do you have anything you need to add?
And right.
We're going right. There's something you need to add about this subject only,
Well,
this right here.
I still want to lead back, and I totally agree with their opinions, and my opinion still holds very strong. If the city manager, for instance, the finance director, her job would be, on a weekly basis, to communicate with the city manager what expenses have gone out, what expenses, whatever it is. There needs to be procedure, and he was not given procedure to this day. It just keeps going back to the same thing.
Okay, so let's say this then, and I'll start with you since you're right on the subject. After we found out, the city manager found out what was going on,
Yeah?
scenario, found out what was going on, and you guys already answered what the procedure and the policy should have been.
Right.
Now, let's say he did the move that, again, where we at on Friday.
All right.
Now, how should this have been handled if you was the mayor? How should this have actually been handled? He didn't, apparently, let's just say, in my opinion, for it to get to this point, apparently, there's been something that was missed. Or something that he didn't do.
Right.
And he obviously didn't go to the city mayor. It was safe to say that?
Right.
He didn't bring it to him for them to find out. So if it gets to that point on your watch that now you find out all of this, city manager and the city chief of police did not, some sort of miscommunication, finance department, now we're at the point on Friday. What do you do then? You follow what I'm asking you? None of this got done. Your policy was ignored. You put a policy in place The general right here put a policy in place, it was totally ignored.
And he's guilty.
Then I'm asking you, what should be done? Should it be a recommend? Should it be a write-up? What can be done now that you're in the predicament? Now, we already heard what you wanted to do, or what you would have done. Now, we're at the place on Friday. Tell me now what exactly you're on Friday now. You're sitting in the seat where Tim was sitting. What do you do now finding out the information that's sitting there? What should we do?
Well, you know, if he was wrong by not looking what was going on in-house, then he should carry the burden.
I'm saying he knew.
Well,
apparently, he may have known.
You stated
Yeah.
that he may have known,
Right.
but they got to the point that now it's on the outside.
Correct.
Okay? But it's his responsibility to make sure that everything and every accuracy of any function of the city, of the services that are being provided to the people of Groveland, that are accurate. In his part, he dropped the ball because even if he knew and it got out, okay, then it shows not a lack of him making sure of knowing what's going on in-house with his staff, but other individuals working in there in that surrounding that is also putting out information to feed to others to make the situation even worse.
So again, I'm going to ask you, and then I'm going to get to him, and then I'll get to the general here. What exactly, you're in a position where Tim is at. You're sitting right there. You find out everything. What now is your procedure on handling this situation? It's out in the public. Now what do? You all of a sudden, you know everything. We were there Friday, all of us.
Right.
Now what exactly do you do now that you are now in this predicament?
Well, first, I would have not called for a meeting to fire him, number one.
Okay.
I would have not called for a meeting to fire him. Number two, I would have not dragged the city further more of embarrassment that we have been embarrassed with past administration in how they do and what they do and how they function with doing business for the people of the city. The third thing that I would have done would have requested a special meeting with council, not with Mr. Jones, with council alone, to request an independent review panel outside of the city that can probably investigate the matter and come back with recommendations.
Would he still been working, or would you have asked him to leave for a week or two while you investigate, or how does all that fan out?
Everyone has a due process, Justice.
Okay.
Everyone has a due process.
Okay.
And if the council and the mayor has no knowledge of contract, as I read the contract, he has 30 days to express or to write or to rebuttal or to answer to those charges. Then let an independent panel investigate the matter, come back to council, give its recommendations, and then act on based on those recommendations.
So let me ask you this as a follow-up, and then I'll get to the man right here. If it's his first offense, do you go with the 3-time offense before you were to suspend him, or how does all of that fan out in your mind? If this is, I'm just asking.
Well, the 3-time offense that he's had come up against him has never...
No, it's not a 3. I'm not saying he got 3. I'm saying if he was your city manager right now, how many offenses do you do before you move in if this were to happen over and over and over again?
Well, you have to look
Let's
at...
say this is his first offense.
Well, his first offense, I would have suspended him.
For the first offense,
For
not
the
the
first
third.
offense.
Okay.
I would have suspended him for the first offense with no pay.
Okay. All right. Mr. Ralph, how would your vote have been if you was on a panel tonight? And of course, he already explained where he was. He would have had it done differently. But if you was in that situation as Friday was, what would you have done?
If I was sitting on that council Friday, the first thing, there are pieces that you have to look at with this. When you talk about penalty and what kind of repercussion there should have been, you have to look at the pieces that are involved. First of all, was there intent? Did the chief intend to purposely mislead the staff or the city manager by continuously using the card? And did he have procedure and know it and violate it? Meaning he did it repetitively, knowing that he shouldn't have done that. Those things lead to what kind of levity you're going to have, or what kind of strength you're going to come with your procedure. Is it going to be a write-up, which I agree with at the very least, because as a leading department head for the city of Groveland, he needs to know. If he didn't know, he still needs to have some level of responsibility.
Okay.
So the write-up absolutely would take.
Mhm.
But
So you believe in the 3, write-up, verbal, and then suspension, is that what you're saying?
I believe it takes more than one attack,
Mhm.
more than one incident
Mhm.
for a leading city department head of your city to make a mistake, and all people are subject to mistake. He is the
Mhm.
chief of police, but he is still human. We
Okay.
have all made mistakes that we've regretted
Correct.
later.
Mm.
And in this instance, when you have a situation where there was clearly misunderstanding, miscommunication, there needs to be responsibility at where did the approval come from, and where's the responsibility at that level, and was it the responsibility that he should have accepted as enough responsibility to take that action?
Okay.
These are all things that the council should have considered and looked at. This is more than just one person, just a chief
Oh, right.
charging cards. This is a procedure or a policy that either isn't there or not being followed, and if not, who are the people that felt justified to give the approval in this? And why did they feel that way? Because there's nothing said against that?
Okay, so let's do this. Now, same question I asked George.
Sure.
You're on the panel. This thing already hit the fan.
Sure.
You're sitting up there Friday.
Right.
How would your vote have been if you had to vote on this thing?
On the city
Because
manager?
here's the thing. Let's just get the scenario.
All right.
Number one, you just
Right.
found out 3 weeks ago.
Right.
All of this happened.
Right.
It done blew up last week. This week, he's not the mayor. Let's say he's not the mayor, but there's another mayor in place.
Right.
They bring it before the city hall.
Mm-hmm.
Is the evidence there? No.
Well, we only gonna go off the evidence we have right now. We
Right.
still don't have it.
Right.
Let me ask you this. So you have, right now, the public sees one thing. City manager, number one,
Okay.
did know about it. Whether it was yesterday or the day prior, he had to have some sort of knowledge for them to say he knew.
Right.
What should he have done, number one, and now where do you stand knowing that he knew, and then of course the chief of police did this? Now to me it's not a big deal because you just pay the credit card off and go, but you're
Right.
also dealing with people money.
Right.
And you're dealing with the city money, so it adds a little bit because it's not yours.
Right.
So what would you have voted on to do, and how would you have voted?
That's a good question. First of all, again, it gets
I know
back
I'm
to
good, but go ahead.
it gets back to the intent.
That's why he's justice.
That's why he's justice. It gets back to, again, the intent of the individual who performed it.
Mm.
Okay? The chief of police did it, if he did it, under the understanding that the city finance director who approved it never laid any ground that it can't be one and done.
Mm.
We heard that a bit of that conversation the other night.
Okay.
If that was the miscommunication, then you get a reprimand, you deal with it,
Mm.
and your city manager gets a reprimand, and he has to deal with it because he should have had clear procedure and policy in place. There should not have been any guesswork. That's the first thing you do.
Mhm.
The second thing that should have come out of that meeting before it agended was, we do not end this meeting without setting a time and a date to have policy taken up so this does not reoccur. It's not always about the incident at hand. It's about making sure that a mistake, whether honest or not, whether happening out of a natural response or out of neglect, you make sure that you don't repeat that mistake. And the only way you make it is to make sure that your people who work for you have a policy and procedure in place to know what to follow.
Mm.
If it happens after that, now you have clear intent.
Okay. So, I know he's itching over here, so let's get to the general
Get to
right
the
here.
general on there.
Does he?
I love it, the general.
Right.
I still going back, gentlemen, to my original, I'm going to harp on this all the way, and you guys are right. Policy and procedure in this particular thing was not adhered to. Now, if you relate to when I got up to the podium, and the first thing that I said, and I don't have the paper in front of me, but basically I said, this is very important. I pointed out to the council that they were negligent with the mayor of setting policy and procedure for Mr. Jones.
That's right.
At that point, once I got into alpha inspections or whatever it was, they knew I was uncovering some evidence that I didn't write. I didn't write the evidence. It was verbatim, and they didn't want to see the true effect that, in this case, Mr. Wilson, according to Mr. Jones, started from 2014 on, he was harassed because he didn't accept the contract that was given to him by Evelyn Wilson and Glenn Wilson at a luncheon or whatever. But that's in the statements. And I never got to really expose. I did. I think I finally got through. I was stopped 2 or 3 times because, you know, when you have hard facts, some people just don't want to accept them, and they will shut you down from telling you those hard facts.
Well, here's what we are going to do, okay? We're going to take Wilson, because I am going to interview him and get his statements, and we are going to talk about what has happened or what transparent. We realized on the video what actually went down. So right now, my main goal is to find out how you guys would have handled it. Now, on that situation so far, are we clear when it comes to the police credit card policies? Everybody agree?
Yes,
Great.
Policies. Now, if we find out that there is no policies, or if there was one and he didn't follow it, or if common sense didn't happen, I still feel like some gap was there. Okay? Now, the second incident that they were on was the police department in that little video issue. Okay? Now, I'm going to start with you. How do you feel this should have been handled? 2015, that's last year. We got a whole year that at least 4 people had to know about it. Am I correct? You saw 2 police officers and 2 fire department. How do you handle it now that it's out? And then, before we go there, what would you have put in place as a policy to make sure it don't happen again? You.
Well, you know, first of all, clear and transparency in this, not an incident, because I don't call this an incident, nor do I agree with the approach or the practices of how this video was put out, okay? Nor do I accept the behavior of the police officer, number one. Number two, I would have probably handled it, and I'm not going to say probably, I would have handled it more in depth. I would have called FDLE to investigate the video. I would also ask FDLE to look into the fire department why they did not report it to the chief of the fire department. There's a lot of discrepancy here in this video with this individual that the EMS was called as a result of him taking medication. What a lot of people are not saying that this individual was also HIV positive. We yet have not implemented training for our first responders to let them know that they are going to become in contact with different types of diseases. Tuberculosis, HIV, anything that can be transmitted through sweat or liquid. Okay, that's something that we need to look into that.
So we need to set a program.
We need to set up programs that we can bring some awareness to our first responder, what they're going to be coming in contact with in this job, number one. Number two, when I say FDLE, it's allow FDLE, an outside agency, to investigate the matter. Now, it came out in December, but this is, and again, I say this because this has always been the practices of past chief of police, to hide things from individuals or from the public, okay, that's going to incriminate the department or incriminate certain groups of individuals that are in the clique, okay, of doing what they want to do. And that still exists. I don't agree with the officer, nor do I condemn whoever put it out, because it was put out by someone. However, what I'm also against, the fact of the matter is that this created more and more of an issue and concern with people in the city because of past practices from Tommy Merrill as the chief of police. Let's take that for example. You know, this officer happened to be one of Tommy Merrill's officers. Okay, he clearly has a list of complaints in his file.
Okay, well, what I want to do is not so much on these two, because we already know what's going on, and they're still probably under investigation. What I want to say is, you found out about the video. How could we have gotten ahead of this thing and make sure it doesn't happen again? So what communications are you going to share, or policy, which you're right, for the fire department and police department, and if something like this did happen again, how then do you make sure it never happens again on your watch?
You know, I think that it's fair to say a review agency not associated with the city to review the department's policy, police department policy, review their records, their performance records. It's essential to have, because when you have your own department investigating your own department, things doesn't come out clear. Having someone from the outside that you can contract to make sure the policies and procedures are being followed, there being a review on an officer at a certain day, or as many as 5 officers for that. But I think that we need to implement a agency that will evaluate performances of our police officers.
Well, isn't that what you have the police
Advisory
for?
Well, the police advisory, their hands are tied, and maybe that would have probably had some impact in looking into these issues. But
Okay.
you know,
So basically, you would come up with a policy, and I want to make sure I'm right, that would make sure that if somebody doesn't, fire the guys who was there, the other police officer was there, they should have reported it to get you guys ahead of it, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And now to you.
Well, first of all, let me say that our public servants, the police, the firemen, they're under enormous pressure. They're under enormous stress. They perform a job every day that most people couldn't or wouldn't want to do, in protecting our rights, protecting our life. So, and they're still human, though. We have to keep that in mind. So, I try to understand that anytime you have a breakdown like we did with the situation with this police officer. Now, first, let me say that under no circumstances do we ever want to be engaging our public that we're here to protect and serve in the manner that that officer ended up doing. It's not correct, it's not acceptable, but there needs to be more as to what happened. I've heard very little come out about what preempted the video that seemed to circulate. And one of the biggest things that I've noticed, not just in Groveland, but in several cities, is the lack of proactive action. Not being willing to get out in front of something before it becomes a bigger something. Whenever we found this out a year ago, there should have been an immediate meeting with all parties who were involved on site, a report made, reviewed by an independent party for its clarity, for its legality, and to see what the next steps should be taken to see that it doesn't repeat. And if necessary, to start to let the public know that if necessary that there was an incident, here is what transpired, here is why it happened, whether that includes a public apology by that officer, whether that includes a public apology by the police chief who's in charge of that officer. We have to show that unity that we're not running from this. It happened. Let's get out in front of it. Let's deal with it. But more importantly, let's show what we're doing to make sure there's not a repeat of this again.
Okay.
That's what I would make sure happens.
Okay. Now, I would go deeper in with you, but we are going to be pushing for time soon. We have to do another segment of Florida, I call it Lake County politics. We'll get on with another segment or another part of this. George, you have any closing words?
well, you know.
Oh, that's right. You know what? Did you have anything that you needed to say about this right
Yes, I did. The General would like to talk on the video. I just seen the video for the first time today.
Okay.
And being in the broadcast industry, which was my profession, and a lot of us can relate to this, the media, this wasn't, of course, a media video. This was shot by an individual. But as you all know, the media will put the meat of the story online with editing. And with Mr. Justice, something that I've learned from you before you've done an interview with me, is there's no editing here. This is where I'm going to go with this video. We don't know what happened a minute and a half, 2 minutes before that police officer has that person on the ground. We have no evidence to see the actual event.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're really studying and making decisions on what we see, what really happened prior to that?
Correct.
What led to that?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So in my estimation, I couldn't make an intelligent decision on whether the police officer was wrong
Mm-hmm.
or right. Of course, his language was really out of hand. That's apparent. But what got him to that point? The video starts, correct me if I'm wrong, what you guys see, he's on the ground with him. We never see what happened before that.
Correct. And here's the other thing, even about that video. I saw the first part of that video a week ago.
Right.
That second part, I don't know how they edited straight to it.
Yeah.
Do you understand? I mean, okay,
Absolutely.
see, you would have to almost pull the original video off
Right.
and then cut it and put that other video in there.
Mm-hmm.
So that dictates what? Do you follow what I'm saying?
Mhm.
I mean, we're talking about splicing an original
Right.
with the police cam or somebody in the police department.
Right.
So we must now start looking where was this leak at. And I think that's one of the things, not trying to tell a chief what he needs to do. He needs to view that video and find out who was in that room. And maybe he can level down, because we already know the cops who was on camera wasn't them. It had to be somebody sitting here.
Right.
Right.
That's what they need to zero in on, because that may qualify for the leak. See, if you
Right.
pull a video off of YouTube, it's going to have YouTube on it, or you got to film it, and you're going to get that glare from the light on it. If it's a direct film, and you want to splice onto it, you can't pull it off of YouTube like that. You got to have the original. And a lot of people don't know that. If I put one of my cameras up on that screen, you know what you're going to get? The camera view. You're going to get that little thing. You ever look at a video, it's got a little circle where you can see where the camera was?
Right.
That's what's going to happen.
The viewfinder.
But if you pull it off, you got to have that original somewhere. Somewhere, someone got the original and then attached it to the police department. So if I was them, I would look for that. But anyway, we're going to do a closing real quick. I think we got how much there? 5 minutes? 4 minutes? Clock? Okay. Let's do this real quick. Closing statement from one of the regular people that live here, who is the manager of Mr. George Rosario, who's running for mayor. Do a closing statement, and we're going to do is wrap this thing up real quick.
Yeah, this was really great, Mr. Justice. As far as I'm concerned, here we are, technically still 4 citizens with concerns and how things are done. And these are our opinions. Of course, you know, justice will prevail. That's what I say. Hopefully, God will be looking out for making sure that it goes down the right way. And a lot of us will admit, a lot of innocent people go to jail that shouldn't be, that should not be in jail.
Right.
And this is a very serious matter. But the people, and if you want to call it the players involved with the city, it's sad. I've witnessed it for 2.5 years, and my involvement, how it started, was with our taxes. I was watching how individuals can manipulate a not-to-exceed rate.
Okay.
And when you really get involved, and that's why I got involved, because I'm seeing that the truth did not come out. It made it look like that the tax rate was, they wanted a lower tax rate when they really wanted a higher tax rate. That's the names I'm not going to get into right now, but we could look into the records, and I had records that proved that. I think Mr. Rosario and I worked on that. We proved that in some of these areas, and you too, Ralph, you probably looked at some of these not to exceed rates, how certain people project an image that they wanted maybe up to, I think it was a 7.2, but really,
The co-producer's giving us a sign right now.
we have to
Your
wrap
time
it
is
up. No, I didn't have much time, you know, I was sitting in the wings, but anyway, that's all I got.
The co-producer's giving us a cue. All right, let's go to Ralph real quick.
Hey, Ralph.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you again for giving us all this opportunity to be able to voice our opinions on not only just what happened, but on some of the things that I know each one of us would like to do different and to see in the betterment of the city and for our residents. The reason why I'm running,
You can look right there.
is because I want to be able to serve this city. I want to be able to help bring cohesiveness to this city, to represent what I know that the businesses need, what I know that our residents want to see, to bring a positive image to Groveland, the reason why most of us have come here. I want to be able to represent that both in and out of the city. And that's why I'm here to serve. And given the opportunity, that's exactly what I will be doing.
Well, that was very nice for you to say. We appreciate it, but this isn't a debate, or you're running for office. This ain't your campaign. Anyway. Anyway, we're going to go to Mayor-elect George.
Look at it.
Yeah, well, first of all, let me thank you, Justice, for having this panel here to discuss.
And this is what I want normally, for us to do this when it's important issues, so the public gets an eye view. So we're not just going to do this county. I just want to let you guys know.
Right.
We got to move on different counties, have different guests coming from different counties, so that we're moving this thing across of change. And it's got to start somewhere.
Right.
Go right ahead, George. Sorry to interrupt.
He interrupted you, George.
That's okay.
I apologize.
You're only running for mayor.
But you know what? He's used to the interruptions.
Justice producers, you got to let
It's his.
You know what? You're right. It's my show. Anyway,
Who else says?
George is used to being interrupted. He gets it every time he speaks. But go ahead.
Yeah, but
Tell
no,
people.
I want to thank you for inviting the guests here to speak to you about the issues that people care the most in the city. Okay, the reason I am running is because I am a conservative constitutional man. I mean, people here in the city are worried about their issues that are going on in their daily life. Okay, and I'm not going to give you a debate speech because I'm not. I'm running for mayor for number one reason: transparency, to bring unity to the city, get people to come out to these meetings and find out exactly what's going on. Okay, so really, in a nutshell, I want to thank you for having us here and talking to the people and letting them know, hey, get out here, come out to these meetings. You don't know what's going on. You only see maybe 5 or 6 people sometime in these meetings, but I think it's extremely important that when things affect you and you complain about it, your best place to go to complain about these issues is go to these meetings, and you'll see how things will really play out and it'll affect your life.
Okay,
Great job.
Great
Well
job.
said.
In closing, we'll be having different forums come up after every meetings. We'd like to thank our other producer along with our camera person at the time. We're not going to call their names, but they did have a good timekeeper who appeared later on. Now, be looking for us. We're going to try to do our best to have a young person form if she can cooperate later on one day dealing with politics. So, of course, Keep News, Vic will be leading it along with her co-partner. Hopefully she shows up. We look forward to it and look forward to us as we move through politics. Justice, law, and order. Thank you.